3 people in the Bible who never died. Number 1, Elijah. During one of Israel's periods, God called Elijah. At that time, Israel had one of its worst kings, whose name was Ahab. Elijah was one of Israel's greatest prophets and was a Tishbite from Gilead, in the region of Transjordan. The Book of Kings covers more of his life than most of the kings themselves, despite not having a book written in his honor. His encounter with the prophets of Baal on Mount Carmel made him very famous. King Ahab embodied idealism in a system that was meant to be prolonged by God's agenda, as the Israelites were his people. Israel suffered as a result of bad governance, but Elijah, on the other hand, represented a different kind of rule. He had no connections to the political establishment or the royal family. He had the ability to speak truth to earthly power without being co-opted or corrupted. Elijah was a person who spoke the truth, no matter who was in charge. He represented a completely different kingdom, with a very different purpose. Elijah seemed to have accomplished the peak of life's adventures heroically, almost unbelievably, yet he was humble at heart. But he was about to surpass them all. He was about to avoid death. Elijah's departure without dying places him in the rare category of deathless departures. Although we are never told when or how, it is clear from the context that he informed Elisha of his imminent departure. God revealed this to the sons of the prophets, as well as to Elisha, the old prophet's close friend and divinely chosen successor. This is depicted in 2 Kings, verses 1 to 12. When the Lord was about to take Elijah up to heaven in a whirlwind, Elijah and Elisha were on their way to Gilgal. We come to Elijah's last day on earth when he would be taken up in a whirlwind. The Hebrew here can also be translated as in a gust, in a windy moment, in a sweeping motion. Elijah would be taken up, and in that instant, he disappeared from this earth into the presence of God. Now, God not only told Elijah that this would happen and how it would happen, but he also told him where it would happen. This explains why we see Elijah moving quickly towards the Jordan. When reading the narrative, imagine the scene unfolding. 2 Kings, verses 2 to 6. Elijah said to Elisha, "Please stay here, for the Lord has sent me to Bethel." But Elisha replied, "As surely as the Lord lives and as you live, I will not leave you." So they went down to Bethel. The company of the prophets at Bethel came out to Elisha and asked, "Do you know that the Lord is going to take your master from you today?" "Yes, I know," Elisha replied. "So be quiet." Then Elijah said to him, "Stay here, Elisha. The Lord has sent me to Jericho." And he replied, "As surely as the Lord lives and as you live, I will not leave you." So they went to Jericho. The company of the prophets at Jericho went up to Elisha and asked him, "Do you know that the Lord is going to take your master from you today?" "Yes, I know," he replied. "So be quiet." Then Elijah said to him, "Stay here. The Lord has sent me to the Jordan." And he replied, "As surely as the Lord lives and as you live, I will not leave you." So the two of them walked on. The company of the prophets asked Elisha the same question both in Bethel and Jericho. "Do you know that the Lord is going to take your master from you today?" Elisha replied in the same way both times, "Yes, I know. Be quiet." Gilgal was the starting point according to Joshua 4. Gilgal was the campsite for the children of Israel after crossing the Jordan into Canaan. If you remember your biblical history, this was the point where they were still safe, just before beginning their invasion into enemy territory. Gilgal was the starting point for Elijah's last journey. Elijah's next stop was Bethel, a place of prayer. Bethel means house of God. Finally, Elijah went to the Jordan, which was a place of death, not just physical death but also the death of self-life. Elisha told Elijah, upon reaching the Jordan, his earthly final destination, "As surely as the Lord lives, I will not leave you." Elijah had been trying to distance himself from Elisha since Gilgal. I believe he was not trying to get rid of Elisha as much as he was testing his next companion, his future successor. When the two men stopped at the Jordan, the scene changed abruptly. Now comes the miraculous event. 2 Kings 2, verses 7 to 10. 50 men from the company of the prophets went and stood at a distance, facing the place where Elijah and Elisha had stopped at the Jordan. Elijah took his cloak, rolled it up, and struck the water with it. The water divided to the right and to the left, and the two of them crossed over on dry ground. When they had crossed, Elijah said to Elisha, "Tell me, what can I do for you before I am taken from you?" "Let me inherit a double portion of your spirit," Elisha replied. "You have asked a difficult thing," Elijah said. "Yet if you see me when I am taken from you, it will be yours, otherwise it will not." This is similar to the miracle that occurred centuries before when God miraculously parted the Red Sea and allowed Moses and the children of Israel to cross on dry ground. At these waters of the Jordan, they parted, allowing Elijah and Elisha to cross the river on dry ground. Then Elijah asked, "What can I do for you before I go, before the Lord takes me from this earth?" 2 Kings 2 verse 11. As they were walking along and talking together, suddenly a chariot of fire and horses of fire appeared and separated the two of them, and Elijah went up to heaven in a whirlwind. This is fantastic. They were walking together and talking. Elijah was not preaching or prophesying at that moment. They were just two close friends walking and talking together. It must have been an incredible moment. 2 Kings 2, verses 12 to 15. Elisha saw this and cried out, my father, the chariots and horsemen of Israel." And Elisha saw him no more. Then he took hold of his garment and tore it in two. Elisha then picked up Elijah's cloak that had fallen from him and went back and stood on the bank of the Jordan. He took the cloak that had fallen from Elijah and struck the water with it. "Where now is the Lord, the God of Elijah?" he asked. When he struck the water, it divided to the right and to the left, and he crossed over. The company of the prophets from Jericho, who were watching, said, "The spirit of Elijah is resting on Elisha." And they went to meet him and bowed to the ground before him in respect. Elijah's no-death contract came into effect suddenly. Nothing of God dies. When a man or woman of God dies, we tend to forget this. Elisha is a prime example, and God always has a plan. Consider, he has had his men and women in every age to continue his work throughout the centuries. God has never been frustrated, wondering what his children would do now that he is gone, now that he is no longer with them. Our Creator, God, is all-powerful and never runs out of resources. Elisha was surprised and astonished for a brief moment, but that did not last long. He leaned down and picked up the prophet's cloak, remembering Elijah's words. He crossed the Jordan again, claiming the power that was now his, and began his own prophetic ministry. From that point forward, God's plan never failed. Elijah goes out, Elisha comes in. Number 2, Enoch. The first mention of Enoch is in Genesis, chapter 5. There was an Enoch who was the son of Cain, and this is not the same Enoch. Genesis 5, verse 21. When Enoch had lived 65 years, he became the father of Methuselah. According to our biblical understanding, we know that his son Methuselah was the oldest recorded man in the scriptures. When we study the genealogies in the Bible, we discover that Enoch was Noah's great-grandfather. Jude 14 was about these people that Enoch, the seventh generation from Adam, prophesied about when he said, "See, the Lord is coming with thousands upon thousands of his holy ones." Jude says Enoch announced the Lord's impending judgment against them. Enoch was a man who walked with God amidst the moral decay in Noah's days and spoke of impending judgment. At a time when most of his contemporaries had only the record of their birth and the children they also begot, Enoch is like a breath of fresh air. Enoch was introduced like others, but his testimony is striking. His description is short but dense, and significantly it means something about his pure walk with God that translated him. His life brought a model to many people over different generations, teaching us to live for an audience of one. He teaches us to passionately seek intimate communion and fellowship with God, knowing that by doing so, we will experience God in a new dimension. Genesis 5, verses 18 to 24. When Jared had lived 162 years, he became the father of Enoch. Jared lived 800 years after the birth of Enoch and had other sons and daughters. So Jared lived a total of 962 years, and then he died. When Enoch had lived 65 years, he became the father of Methuselah. Enoch walked faithfully with God 300 years after the birth of Methuselah and had other sons and daughters. So all the days of Enoch were 365 years. Enoch walked with God. Then he was no more because God took him away. The case of Enoch was the first documented rapture, as God simply took him. Perhaps the fellowship was so intense that God's presence just enveloped and raptured him. The book of Hebrews speaks of the man of whom this world was not worthy. Hebrews 11 verses 5 and 6. By faith Enoch was taken from this life so that he did not experience death. He could not be found because God had taken him away. For before he was taken, he was commended as one who pleased God. And without faith, it is impossible to please God, because anyone who comes to him must believe that he exists and that he rewards those who earnestly seek him. It is a great comfort to know that God will always sufficiently and abundantly prepare for his own and tenderly watch over us until we miraculously flourish. Chronicles 16, verse 9. For the eyes of the Lord range throughout the earth to strengthen those whose hearts are fully committed to him. You have acted foolishly in this. Therefore, from now on you will have wars while the Father pours his possession over us to see us grow. What he really wants from us is an honest and unpretentious response to the love he gives us. But a time is coming and has now come when the true worshipers will worship the Father in spirit and truth. John 4 verses 23 and 24. God is spirit, and his worshipers must worship in the spirit and in truth. God is always seeking faithful and loyal hearts that will live their lives completely for him. These are the vessels through which he can truly use and manifest his glory. Enoch, according to the scriptures, did not meet the fate of Adam and the rest of his descendants. He did not die. Enoch is used as an example of the rapture in the New Testament. One goal of Enoch's translation is to emphasize the truth of the scriptures that there is a final redemption for all of us who put our faith in the Lord. Although the vast majority of believers will experience physical death, Enoch's example gives believers hope that in the end, they will triumph over death. Number 3, Christians in the end times. Now we are entering into recorded prophecy. This is one that is yet to be fulfilled as written. Although many of us hope, for we do not know the exact time when Jesus will return, we will experience the pangs of death. Christians in the end times will also experience a rapture. Notice in 1 Thessalonians 4 verses 13 to 18 that both Christians who have previously died and those who are still alive will participate in this event together. 1 Thessalonians 4 verses 13 to 18. Brothers and sisters, we do not want you to be uninformed about those who sleep in death, so that you do not grieve like the rest of mankind, who have no hope. For we believe that Jesus died and rose again, and so we believe that God will bring with Jesus those who have fallen asleep in him. According to the Lord's word, we tell you that we who are still alive, who are left until the coming of the Lord, will certainly not precede those who have fallen asleep. For the Lord himself will come down from heaven, with a loud command, with the voice of the archangel and with the trumpet call of God, and the dead in Christ will rise first. After that, we who are still alive and are left will be caught up together with them in the clouds to meet the Lord in the air. And so we will be with the Lord forever. Therefore, encourage one another with these words. Thus, in both cases, we will experience the rapture at that time. Like Enoch, Christians will be caught up in the air. Therefore, one of the reasons for Enoch's translation is that he prefigures an entire generation of believers who will not taste death.